to other surface streets here, you're not seeing as much activity with the vehicles. So it's likely that a lot of these are the looters that are going from one location to the other. They're just circling around, going wherever the police are not. Here's a group of, I believe that's firefighters here that are staged on this street up here. I believe that's 7th Street. And so we're seeing the police department down here stretched thin as well. It's very typical of what we've been seeing in the last couple of days, where the officers are trying to get to these locations, and once a unit or the officers leave, they come right back and start hitting the stores once again.
You know, it was interesting when we were talking to Police Chief Robert Luna earlier. I asked him specifically, how are you going to get some of the protesters out of the area? Because at that point, and that was what, maybe an hour 15 minutes ago, they had a lot of people still in the Long Beach area down near Shoreline and Ocean. And he said, we're going to do it block by block. But when you consider how large Long Beach is, that is a daunting task.
It really is, and here's a look at that block-by-block movement. We're seeing some officers here on my left side, Jim. We're looking at some vehicles moving northbound on, this is Pine Avenue, slowly moving up past that Gold's Gym, and they're moving towards some vehicles that are up north of that street there, which was 6th Street, I believe. And they're just moving slowly through the city that way in that particular area. It really is quite a chaotic scene with fire department trucks and vehicles moving in different directions. Some are staged, and then a lot of the vehicles that are just traveling up and down, turning in to points that have been hit. Here's that El Super that I was talking about, and it looks like a couple more vehicles that have pulled in the front of there. You see the shopping carts all a wreck there, and the front doors crashed in by probably those shopping carts right now. Right turn, Jim. And so we're seeing that activity. But the police were here a short time ago, and here they come. They come right back as soon as the police leave, and they go right into the store to continue looting.
And Colleen, you know, this is that 20% that Chief Robert Luna was talking about, and the unfortunate taking away from the peaceful protesting we did see. Gil, as far as you know, you probably haven't seen any kind of peaceful protest in quite some time.
Not on this flight for sure. It's mostly just the looting that's going on and the police response trying to get to wherever they can to stop this activity from happening.
Gil, we're going to stay with your shot as we bring in our own Conan Nolan. Conan, we understand you have a video message from Mayor Eric Garcetti to show us.
That's right. He, you know, so much social media is evident in what we're seeing here in terms of the monitoring of those groups that are bent on destruction and those groups using social media that we have seen in order to organize. The mayor of Los Angeles, who is well aware of the importance and the power of social media, tonight released his own statement via Twitter, again asking Angelenos to stay home, safe at home, this time not so much about the COVID-19 global pandemic, but about the public health and safety in a city that's being torn apart as a result of these violent protests. Here it is.
Today, we saw peaceful protests across the Southland and throughout this nation. We also saw images of looting and violence that are nothing to do with our protest. Criminals are wrong to think that they can hijack this message, undermine this movement, and divide us. They will not. So to those who are hurting, we hear you. And to those who are acting criminally by smashing windows and looting, we see what you are doing and we will arrest you. Angelenos have it in our hearts to look out for one another. We've seen heroes stand in front of stores refusing to let them be looted. We've seen communities come together to clean sidewalks in front of damaged buildings, businesses that were to reopen this weekend and provide jobs for people who haven't had a paycheck, folks who have cleared graffiti off of synagogues, who want to reclaim their neighborhoods. We've seen people peacefully protest and refuse to let a pure message of nonviolence become co-opted by those who think that violence is the answer. It is never the answer. And we've seen people follow the lead of a great hero, John Lewis, who called on this nation this weekend to be constructive, not destructive, to follow the footsteps of Dr. King, to bend the arc of history towards justice, to march peacefully and powerfully for freedom and equality, and to meet hate with hope. You see, we are a great city, and we are at our greatest when we are a good city. We can be a great country, and we are our greatest when we're a good country. And we have the capacity, each one of us, to be great people, but only when we are good people. As we wrestle with the demons of racism and brutality, as we see violence around us, we must find our better angels, and I know that we will. So please, stay safe and observe the curfew. Please go home and stay there. And may strength and love for one another guide us, as always, Los Angeles. Good evening.
The mayor of Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti, I have to tell you that that is the kind of message he has sent with regard to the COVID-19 crisis and the economic crisis that is caused about it, hope and love. I'm sure there are plenty of people out there that believe that, but when he says to those store owners who've been impacted by this, we hear you, a lot of them, I'm sure, would retort, we don't want you to hear us, we want you to protect us. And we have seen lots of establishments just absolutely demolished, some catching fire without any evidence of police support. And I have to tell you, in listening to the chief of police of Long Beach earlier, about an hour and a half ago, when he said that they weren't going to arrest anyone who was protesting peacefully after the curfew, you had to ask then, why have a curfew? Because the curfew is designed to say it is against the law for you to be on the street, that once you're there, you are aiding and abetting those who are here to violate the law and to loot. So in any case, there are going to be lots of questions on the police response. Right now, it's extremely difficult for what they're doing, but this is not going away anytime soon, I'm afraid.
It is now 9 o'clock, and you're watching our extended coverage of the protests following the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. This is a live picture from Long Beach from Newschopper4 Bravo. We also have a picture from Newschopper4 Alpha on the left side of your screen about what's been happening today in Santa Monica. There is a curfew that went into effect for all of LA County at 6 o'clock this evening, but we're still seeing people out on the streets of several cities, Colleen.
Yes, we have. We've certainly seen pockets of looting in Santa Monica. We've been watching it live right here in Long Beach, despite the majority of the protests being peaceful. Meantime, members of the National Guard, we've seen that as well in downtown LA. They were protecting City Hall the last time we saw them. Let's go to NBC4's Kim Tobin right now with some video from what is happening in Santa Monica for us. Kim.
Hey there, Colleen. We want to point this out to you right now. We see the sheriff's deputies. This is kind of the shift change here at the command center on Colorado. So you can kind of see them all lining up, kind of hanging off of that vehicle right there. They have their shields on, they have their helmets on, their vests on, and they just came in. It looks like they're doing a switch out right now. Right beyond those gates there, right beyond that fence, is what we believe to be the command post here. So we have the sheriff's deputies, we have the fire engines, we have ambulances, emergency vehicles, also many members of the National Guard. And I do want to see if my photographer Haley can kind of zoom in. We see what looks to be a really big, maybe a Humvee or something of the sort, right behind that security gate there, and you can kind of see the next round of what looks like possibly the National Guard there in their camouflage as they are ready to possibly head out. This is the area that we've kind of been watching this whole time, that they get these sirens on, they run out, many vehicles will kind of burst out of here and then respond. And right here, Haley, if she wants to come back to this way, we can see more of these vehicles here. Police officers, we have the sheriff's deputies again on these big vehicles where they're kind of hanging off. It looks like they're coming back in, switching out with some of the folks who are now going to go out and replace them. So you can see they have their weapons there right overhead, hanging off on the side of here, all geared up for anything that's going to be happening here in the Santa Monica area. As we saw a lot of that looting, a lot of the violence and destruction, even on this corner right here. I don't know if you can see here from where we are standing, there's already graffiti just all along this entire area. So we have tons of police officers. We have the fire vehicles here as well that are getting ready for kind of this shift change as we get in, but it's kind of a little bit eerily quiet here, and you get to certain parts where you can see the smashed out windows, you can see people almost kind of casing, but it's a little bit of a case of cat and mouse right now. Those small little groups that are kind of breaking off, going to this spot, they put their sirens on here, they respond to those incidents, and then they likely are taking some of those people into custody. When we were making our rounds around this area, it looks like 4th and Pico, it's cleared up now according to our helicopter, but just a little while ago we saw maybe 10 to 15 people who were sitting in handcuffs on the sidewalk. So it could have been one of those rounds where they went out, responded, and then came back here now after making those arrests and possibly processing those people. But this is a big line of vehicles, all sheriff's deputies here, a lot of undercover vehicles behind us as well that are heading back into that command post. So a lot of action so far right here at the moment. And then they might have them again where they switch on those sirens and they come bursting out of this area. And here comes some of the fire department as well. They've been putting out multiple fires here in this area because, again, those looters that are destroying those businesses, not only are they clearing them out of all of their merchandise, but then they're going in, they're setting small fires. So you see the paramedics, the fire departments there are having to respond to those calls as well. Small fires that broke out here and also police vehicles that were set on fire here in the Santa Monica area as well. So this is kind of the staging area. This is where they're getting ready, everything to go. And then they go out and respond. Again, the National Guard. If we can get a little bit closer in here. So here come a bunch of other ones here too. The lights flashing. They're making their presence known, and a lot of stragglers are still kind of walking around. Again, keep in mind, this area has been under that mandatory curfew since 4 p.m. today. So for hours now, they're telling people, get inside, go home, it's over now. They had the helicopter circling just a little bit ago, telling them on the loudspeaker, time to go home or you're going to get arrested. And likely that's what we're seeing when they're heading out. And now these shift changes. Here come a bunch more. The police officers there with LAPD are coming in and making their way into that command post center. So if we can walk up this way a little bit, I'm gonna have my photographer follow me. Again, this is the command area that we're seeing around Colorado. But I want to point your attention here. Again, these are the vehicles going in. Let's see the vehicles that are likely
Kim, can you hear me for a second?
Out.
Kim?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, so what we're looking at here, you're in Santa Monica at this command post. We have a split screen here. Newschopper4 Alpha is over that area I believe you were talking about. We see a lot of people sitting on the curb here. Looks like they may be getting arrested. Let's go topside real quick to Ileana Moreno, and we'll come back to you in a moment. Ileana.
Okay.
I'm going to go across the street real quick to see if they'll talk to me. Kim was referencing the people that had gotten arrested here in Santa Monica, and we found at least a dozen people who got arrested here on Wilshire Boulevard with a cross of 3rd. Their backs resting up against the Panini Kebab and Grill restaurant there. We did go check out the area of 4th and Pico. It looks like they had already transported all of those individuals, but this is possibly a second group of people that is now under police custody. The Santa Monica Police Department is the lead on this one. I only see their cruisers here on scene, and I did see a sheriff's transportation bus when we first arrived on scene, and now I see a metro bus. So this and it's actually just leaving the scene as we speak, so that bus may actually have additional suspects or people who are under custody rather on board. And if I push in right here, we can actually see that there are people who are handcuffed sitting in this big blue bus on the way to the local jail here to be taken again into custody in relation to all of the vandalism or perhaps just the curfew violation here in Santa Monica.
And Eliana, that's what I wanted to ask you next, was whether it's clear at this point whether these people were looting or they were simply peacefully protesting. Is it clear at this point what these people were doing when they were arrested?
It's unclear because when we arrived on scene, everyone was already in custody, so we were not able to witness any crime for us to be able to say that they were in fact responsible for any of the looting or any of the vandalism that we have seen in Santa Monica this afternoon. These could just be people who were peacefully protesting, but they did not follow the rules of the curfew that was put in place here in Santa Monica that started at 4 o'clock. So it could have been that these people decided to hang around, and this is the consequences of their action. They are now in police custody.
Eliana, we're going to cut you off really briefly. We're going to go to the police chief in Santa Monica.
Answer what I think your questions are. So we did have National Guard response and arrival shortly before 8 p.m., and that has been a dramatic impact here in the city. They are securing the areas that we have already secured and taken care of, which is allowing us to move our officers and our mutual aid assets into the remaining parts of the city and take care of some smaller crowds that are gathering there. We're working our way through this problem. As I said, we've made hundreds of arrests for both curfew and for criminal activity. Our curfew is in place. Please stay home, stay safe. And for those of you that are in Santa Monica, please know that the curfew is in place, and if you do not leave, then you will be arrested. We'll continue to work this problem, as I said, and also begin immediately to render aid and support to our businesses, and especially our businesses in the downtown area. We have assets in place. We will secure the downtown area and continue that into the evening and the next several days. Thank you all very much for your participation in this, your commitment to watching. I received several well wishes via text from community members and thanks for the job that our officers and other officers are doing there. I appreciate that. Thank you for the contact. We are in this together. We will heal together and we will recover together. Thank you.
We've been listening to Chief Cynthia Renaud there,
so
Santa
much,
Monica
Chief. We'll now
Police.
turn to the
Let's see
Santa
who
Monica
else comes
Fire
up to the
Department.
podium here.
Deputy Chief Judy.
Good evening. Thank you. The Santa Monica Fire Department's #1 priority is still life and safety. We don't have any active fires burning at this time. Curfew and get off the streets, go home, and be safe. We're working with PD from multiple cities, fire departments from multiple cities, LAFD, Santa Monica PD, LA PD, and Culver City have been there, Beverly Hills as well. Please refrain from calling 911. It will overburden the system. Since noon today, Santa Monica emergency dispatchers have handled over 3,400 calls. Total calls for service including 1,500 911 calls. To provide context, on an average day, the Santa Monica Fire Department gets 200 emergency calls. So please, if it's not a life-threatening situation, please don't dial 911. We appreciate your support and kind thoughts. Thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you so much, Deputy Chief. I want to remind everyone, information is critical right now. Please do sign up for Santa Monica emergency alerts. You can do that by going to www.santamonica.gov/newsletter. Our community newsletter at santamonica.gov/newsletter. Of course, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram are great ways to get immediate information from the city at City of Santa Monica. We ask you to do that. And with that, we will conclude our press conference, and we really thank our media partners, CBS, for
news conference very quickly and switch to what's happening in Long Beach. Certainly one of the hotspots identified along with Santa Monica and Whittier right now. Let's listen in.
We have also instituted an emergency curfew as of 8 p.m. tonight, and that is currently in effect all the way through 5 a.m. in the morning. We will reevaluate that curfew and extend it if needed. While the city supports peaceful assembly and free speech, we cannot tolerate destruction of property, looting, or violence. For the safety of everyone in the community, including our first responders, business owners, protesters, and residents, we've enacted this curfew to keep everyone safe. This is an extraordinary time in our city. Let me take a moment just to say, I know you are all frustrated. We are all frustrated. We are angry and heartbroken over the tragic death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. But we urge everybody in the city and the entire region to abide by the curfew and to remain calm. We do know, as the mayor mentioned, that most people who assembled peacefully and were airing their grievances in their First Amendment right, and we thank you for that. So while our Long Beach community is known for its willingness to support each other, especially during these challenging times, we challenge you to do exactly that. We've been through very tough times in the past. We will get through this one as well. Let's work together and make Long Beach safer for everyone. And so we have all of our emergency systems deployed. We have everyone out there working. City crews are together, working as hard as we possibly can, but it is an incredibly tough situation. I'd like to bring up our police chief, Robert Luna, to talk through what is going on out there and the process as well for asking for assistance, which we have been doing since earlier today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, Mr. City Manager. Today's a sad day here in our city. To see what's occurring around us, it is heartbreaking. But I want to tell everybody that lives in the city that we have an extensive amount of police officers out in our community, and we are bouncing around from call to call. We're trying to handle as much as we possibly can. deploying officers, like I said earlier, all over the city, but specifically in our downtown area. Please know that as we as a police department saw a lot of this civil unrest around the country, we as a police department started to prepare. We wanted to make sure that our training, our equipment, that our staffing was going to be up for whatever came our way. We were standing ready in the last couple of days. As a matter of fact, yesterday, we augmented our staffing. We had more staffing in. We actually sent several dozen officers to the city of Los Angeles to assist them because Long Beach wasn't impacted. But tonight, we were impacted. Typically on a Sunday, we have our normal staffing, and because we had a scheduled protest at our police station tonight, we actually quadrupled the number of officers in the city, specifically around the downtown area. As the mayor stated earlier, we had several thousand protesters that showed up to the front of the police station and then marched around the downtown area. As they marched, they were joined by hundreds and then eventually became thousands of other people. Within that hour, our officers, our command staff that was running this event, made a decision to contact the Emergency Operations Bureau from LA County Sheriffs, and we immediately asked for mutual aid. What that basically means is that we summons police officers from around the county, the region, and the state. Immediately, we were sent several dozen officers to us, and right away we ended up asking for more officers. Eventually, we had what we call multiple platoons. I'm not going to get into specific numbers, but several hundred additional officers to augment the hundreds of Long Beach officers we had here. As the protests grew, and they grew violent, unfortunately, we continue to make requests for resources. Once the county said the resources were expended, that's when the National Guard was requested. That request went in here in the last hour, and we were advised that the National Guard is en route to Long Beach to assist the Long Beach Police Department and all the other officers who are currently assisting us. And as I talk about these other officers, these are officers that are coming from different communities, so I really want to reach out and say thank you for helping our city. You've really helped us a lot. I know we're seeing some very disturbing images on TV, and to be honest with you, I hope they disturb you. They're very much disturbing us. We've gotten inquiries from the media. How could you let this looting occur? It's irritating to watch people go into stores and basically break into them and steal the items. Yes, steal. They're not theirs. There's no reason to do this. And this is what's sad. When we planned for this protest today, we planned for a large group of protesters to come here and express their First Amendment rights and express their anger in a positive way with the loss of life with George Floyd. I've written about this earlier. I'm upset about it. And here's the sad part. Every police officer at the Long Beach Police Department that I've spoken to is also very upset about the way that George Floyd died. And we're out here trying to facilitate a peaceful protest. And I'm going to say about 80% of the people are doing the right thing. Blocking the streets, signs, yelling, that's okay. What's not okay is you had individuals who came into the group and started to vandalize vehicles, throw items at police officers, and they're the ones who started breaking away, went down into our Pike area and started to break windows and start looting stores. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not the way you make a point. How does that, how do we celebrate the life of George Floyd or even talk about his tragic death when you have people committing crimes? That's not what we're going to tolerate. And as the evening goes on, we are going to get control of our streets. People are going to go to jail. We're going to enforce this curfew that'll go on until this event is over, and we will bring peace back to Long Beach. I promise you that. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my partner, the fire chief. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Mayor, Mr. City Manager. I just wanted to take a moment to let you know exactly what we're doing in the fire department. We received a number of questions about how we prepare for something like this. And first and foremost, I can tell you that the tragic incident that occurred in Minneapolis many days ago has affected us all adversely, and as it affected our city, obviously, and it's still going on around us. What I want to portray to you is the pride that I have in the men and women of the Long Beach Fire Department and the police department and everybody that's here that's responding to the city's needs. They are coming here of their own volition. They haven't hesitated. They haven't faltered. And regardless of what's going on around them, they are responding, and they're here for you. As soon as the incident occurred in Minneapolis, we start to make our observations and try to become aware of exactly what's going on. And I can tell you, I've been in close discussions with the police chief, the city manager, and getting prepared for just this type of situation. We've had our command staffs together. We've been working very collaboratively together throughout the procedure. And in fact, we are over at headquarters right now working together as we speak. Along the same lines with Chief Luna, I can tell you that mutual aid has come to our assistance again today. Unfortunately for us, we have wildfires that occur each and every year throughout the year, and so we are well versed in using mutual aid. At a certain point this evening, we began to get overwhelmed with the amount of incidents that we had coming in. We reached out to the region. They sent us a strike team from LA County. That strike team is still working with us downtown. They'll be with us here tonight until the situation alleviates itself and they can respond back into their own district. But for now, extremely thankful not only to the LA County Fire Department, but to everybody else that has reached out to us to offer their assistance. I can't tell you how proud I am of everyone in the community, all the residents, all the visitors that are coming here to the city, and how they're responding to this and the resiliency. I know that we will get through this. I've been here for 34 years, and I've seen quite a bit in that career, and I've seen the resilience of the residents of the city of Long Beach, and I know that we will rebound. Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And again, I want to thank the incredible men and women of both the Long Beach Fire Department and the Long Beach Police Department who are doing a great job out there under very difficult circumstances. Before we close, I just want to say two other things. The first is just know that the entire city leadership, our community leadership, is working on this issue, and understanding and knowing that our city is going to recover from this. But right now we are ensuring the safety of everyone. And so we need your help. Every member of the Long Beach City Council, our community leaders, our faith group, we're imploring and asking you tonight to please stay home. And for all those that are looting and that are causing destruction in our city, you are not welcome in our community. You are not welcome in Long Beach. Long Beach is a diverse, strong, and beautiful place with good people who have always strived for justice and to make our community better. And so I want to concur and agree with what the chief said. We will get control of the situation. The police department, our partners in the police department, and the National Guard, and our partners at the state are all working together to ensure the safety of our city. And so with that, we will go ahead and take some questions from the press. But to everyone else watching tonight from Long Beach, hang tight, and we are going to work to make sure that we get this resolved and stay safe. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first question is from Jeremiah from the Long Beach Post. Go ahead, Jeremiah.
Hi, Chief Luna and Mayor Garcia. Do you have a sense yet of the scope of the damage and injuries? How many places have been looted? How many police officers or protesters or looters have been injured or arrested. And Chief Luna, one thing specifically you said you were prepared for a large protest. But why wasn't there the expectation that this would turn into exactly what we saw tonight with looting, especially after what we saw in LA?
So I'll start. So we're obviously assessing the damage right now. I think what you're seeing from the images on TV, what you're seeing certainly on social media is significant damage to a lot of really great mom and pop, many mostly minority-owned businesses across our city. That assessment will continue, and of course, where the determination of the arrests and what's happening, we'll be able to have a much bigger picture, I think, probably by tomorrow. Right now, we're just trying to tamp down what is happening right now. And I will add, and the chief can add to this, but absolutely the city was preparing for a worst-case scenario. We've been preparing for that for days. But what we were hoping for was a peaceful protest. And that's something that, in my opinion, turned very violent, unfortunately, from a lot of folks that are not part of our community. Chief.
Yeah, to answer the first question in regards to the number of locations that have been impacted, on the drive here, I know there's been at least 7 or 8 different locations that had been looted. I know that the first reports of looting happened down in the Pike area, and our officers responded there. There was, the media was covering some of that. Sometimes you get the anger from people saying, where are the police? We were everywhere, but it takes time to get there. When we got there, we gained control of that situation pretty rapidly. But one of the challenges we face is that once you come into an area, you can't give it up. So we're leaving people, and that's where the additional officers come into play. I know right before coming in here, I did another media interview, and I was away from all the television sets, and I was being asked about a Ross store that was being looted, a clothing store, and I know we had officers en route at that time. We'll assess that. The mayor talked about it, whether it's later tonight, early tomorrow. We're in response mode right now. When we start recovering from that, we'll be able to make those counts. The direction for me through our command post is to make as many arrests as we can. That has been very difficult to do at the early stage because we've been getting so many different calls and the officers running around from location to location. So I don't have an exact number of what we have yet. I didn't expect them to be too high, those numbers, early on, but as this night wears on and we start enforcing the curfew and get even more resources than when we have, those numbers, I assure you, will go up. And the mayor said it earlier, if you're coming to this city to involve yourself in either looting or committing crimes or hurting people, we're going to come after you. We're going to put you in jail, and we're going to get you prosecuted. We will not accept this in this city. That's very important. And Jeremiah, I think the other question you asked is, if we're expecting a protest, why weren't we more prepared? We deployed 4 to 5 more times the number of officers that we normally do on a Sunday. We brought in hundreds of officers, and yeah, we're gonna debrief this at the end and figure out, should we have brought thousands in? I gotta tell you, maybe that's the case, but the expectation was that people were going to protest peacefully. We didn't expect, we knew we're always going to get agitators. We didn't expect this number of, but now we're going to start dealing with it, and we're getting those resources that we need.
We want to step away from the press conference happening there in the city of Long Beach to get over to Kim Tobin to get on the ground in Santa Monica. Kim, when we first got on the air, a lot of the looting began at the Santa Monica place that Bloomingdale's right behind you, and it appears there's still plenty of damage left over.
Yeah, you can see right behind me, Jonathan, here the door is completely smashed in at the Bloomingdale's. You have a bunch of what it looks like possibly fragrances, cologne, handbags, some Vans, shoes, purses there just on the ground. And look at how heavy duty these doors are. And you think about the force that was likely needed to break those down. And if I'll be quiet for a second, you can hear.
Let's see what else we got.
Those are the sirens and the alarms that are going off here right now. This is where, when we watch the National Guard roll out, remember.
So just wondering if that was the case.
Yeah, I think that we know already that
either that sort of set.
So it is again.
The whole scene, the tone, as they were talking about earlier. Police saying what you do tonight sets the tone, how this evening will go, how they'll respond. On Friday night, what happened at the Justice Center, I think, set the tone. It was when in Minneapolis, when they burned the precinct there. They'd never seen anything like that. We'd never seen anything like that at the Justice Center. It was ransacked. People were in the first floor working when the fire was set. They got out unharmed. The sprinkler system put out the fire, but now the Sheriff's Department is trying to determine who set the fire. So if you have any information, call that tip line. But that's how that night went Friday night, from that into fires set in dumpsters, fireworks thrown into buildings Friday night in the Chase Bank. We saw looting at Pioneer Place and a number of other places with people running out with merchandise, and damage estimated now to be in the tens of millions of dollars for Friday night. So everyone hoping that tonight, although we're seeing thousands of people downtown, that remains peaceful.
That is a really good point to make, too. The difference that we've seen over the past 3 nights from Friday night, when we saw so much destruction in the city. And, we did see some of that last night, but definitely on a much, much smaller scale. And here today, as we do see, it looks like some of the protesters kind of getting around some of that scaffolding in this video, but we're seeing such large crowds, and we aren't seeing that same scale of destruction that we saw on Friday night. And that is so important. And Laurel, we talk about, obviously, all of this is stemming from what happened in Minneapolis. And as many of you might know, I am a native Minnesotan, and Minneapolis was my home. So it's been really eye-opening to see the two cities that I love the most really grappling with this, and the rest of our country grappling with this and trying to find a way to move forward. And I've had the privilege of talking to some Black community leaders. I was talking to Kiyoshi Owens today. She's an equity consultant firm founder here in Portland, and she was talking about, we need to find a way to work together. We need to find a way to love, and that goes beyond when we see these types of protests. It needs to be incorporated every single day, and that understanding and that conversation and bringing those voices to the table, expanding your worldview. She really talked about expanding your worldview. It sounds trite, but putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, what a difference that can make. And right now, I think that's a little bit of what the world really needs. We're seeing so many people out here in Portland tonight, and it does seem like a lot of people just standing around at this point, gathering. If only we could hear what conversations were happening down there on the ground. I think, Morgan Romero talked to community leaders today, and she said their response to what's happening is just as unique as the people that we talk to, just as diverse as the people in our community. And I think that that's something to really importantly remember. We each have a story, we each have feelings, and it's important to voice those feelings and do it safely.
And I think from what we've seen, the crowd here showing solidarity with the Black community and staying peaceful right now for really all day. Largely, we've seen a peaceful demonstration. Portland Fire Chief Sarah Boone, who is African American, said yesterday the anger and violence being witnessed is not only about the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis, but also about a system that allows people of color to feel fear every day. And also during this pandemic, that's exacerbated things. There's been such a disproportionate number of Black Americans who have been hit by the coronavirus. Not only are a lot of their households affected with wage earners being out of work, or a lot of them are on the front lines, and so there's been a disproportionate number of Black Americans who have been infected with the virus and who have died from the virus. So that is the background upon which this is happening, with George Floyd's killing almost a week ago in Minneapolis. that just unleashed all that anger and hurt that they have been feeling for hundreds of years in this country. But then you just put it in context of the pandemic and what they're going through there. And this is an example of that pain and trying to be heard and let people feel it. And I think what we're seeing in Portland is people showing their solidarity. And there are thousands of people downtown doing that right now. Sarah Boone called this a moment of reckoning. We're going forward together to create an actual community where respect and dignity are our core values. And I think that's what all city leaders hope come out of this. Mayor Ted Wheeler, saying that they have clear expectations, that they're setting these clear expectations with this curfew, but also closing off the off-ramps into downtown, saying they won't tolerate vandalism and violence, but they do respect people's First Amendment rights. And it does look like the police are really trying to allow that expression of their First Amendment rights as long as this demonstration tonight remains peaceful.
And it is important to note, we saw some of it last night where there looked like there were just a few people walking around interested to see what was happening. Not sure if they were involved in the protest or not, but because of that 8 p.m. curfew, please just continue to keep an eye on our coverage, follow things on social media. Do not go to downtown and put yourself in that situation if you're not already there. We'll continue to bring you that coverage because, again, that curfew went into place at 8 p.m. tonight. And so we definitely want to keep that informed for you people at home who are watching this, because we did see some people out last night curious, how could you not be, to see what's happening in your own backyard. But as we as journalists continue to try and stay back from it ourselves, we ask that you do as well. And Laurel, when you were talking about the long systemic history of oppression and injustice for people of color, and especially our Black community, that was something today that when I was talking to Kiyoshi, I said, you always start a conversation, right? How are you doing? And it's so just formulaic for us to say, oh, good, even though we're not. And I was just like, I was taken back a little bit, and I said, it's just been such a crazy, crazy week. And she's like, crazy week? It's been a crazy 100 years. Mm-hmm. And that hit me really hard. And I think that it is important for us to remember the history and the things that led us here. And I think that we'll continue to examine that for the weeks and months to come. But it is really important to remember the history. And one of the things I really took away when talking to Kiyoshi as well was about educating ourselves and the things that I myself find my ignorance in, and not looking for that other perspective. And that goes for all of us. Everyone can use a little bit more perspective. And that's really important to keep in mind as we move forward. And we remember that this is happening now, this is happening in our city, but it's what happens next and what we do next, what action happens, what we can do with our city leaders. And I've heard some people who are much more eloquent and well-spoken than I say, this is anger. Anger's real. It needs to be taken into action, and that's about reaching out to public and politicians and people who lead our community.
And I know we heard Mayor Wheeler say earlier, I need to do more. I need to do more. And I think a lot of people are feeling that way, that we need to do more. And that is the message that a lot of people are taking from this, is what can we do? What can we do? And I have seen people on Facebook say, people who are not Black, who say, I can't know that experience, but I can listen and I can have respect, and we can learn what can we do next in this city and across the country. And what we're witnessing tonight, if you're just joining us here on KGW.com, is another night of protests. It's the third night of protests. They were much more destructive. We haven't seen the destruction tonight, and we're hoping that remains the case. The destructive on Friday night, Saturday night, not as destructive. There were about 48 arrests on Saturday. Portland Fire and Rescue responded to 5 structure fires yesterday, 2 vehicle fires, and some dumpster fires. So far, we haven't gotten any reports like that, but what we're seeing, this crowd that's downtown now started out earlier this evening in Laurel.
Take a zoom in there and take a look at what's going on. 2 fire trucks moving about in the neighborhood here. It's unclear what they were responding to, but it looks like they're back out on Long Beach Boulevard heading to the next call.
So you can see that these are right now the curfew Now we can see here. Okay. Let's check it out on any other.
All right. Looks like our signals.
But we're hearing calls. We're hearing calls like that all the.
Not getting any live.
All right, our signal's a little spotty right now with Derek Bell. We'll get back to him in just a few minutes. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
From the people. From the people directly.
As we go to air tonight, the
in a country gone to hell. A loaded assault rifle snatched by a private guard at gunpoint as officers are dangerously outnumbered, surrounded.
Officers being chased by the group here.
Their cars on fire. Looters take over. As Saturday night anarchy reigns through America. This is Beverly Hills. High-end stores looted, famous shopping centre The Grove cleaned out. And burning. Fairfax near Hollywood, a battleground. LA has survived a history of race riots. It's in one again.
It's one of our darkest days.
So
when I saw it
last,
and it's repeating.
This time it's nationwide. New York, under siege.
Oh my God, oh my God.
In Minneapolis, it felt different.
In every part of America, you can see the same thing.
Patrol has just arrived. We're preparing to take on these protesters and throwing flash grenades right now. Cam, they got me in the arm, Cam. We need to get back to the car. Go. Tonight, police have had enough. I was not expecting them to come with that much force. Cam, you all right? Yeah. A force not willing to lose control for another night.
Come on, we're so bad.
We've just taken cover behind the car. There is so much tear gas. It's really hard to breathe. Right across the country,
it's a revolution.
A weekend escalation was the fear. As night fell, America unravelled before our eyes. A block from the White House, buildings burn. The National Guard moving into American streets. Not just the big cities, even Ohio is under attack. A local with a bow and arrow.
You call yourself an American?
Yes, I'm American. All lives matter. Took aim at protesters before they turned on him. In the home of country music, Nashville City Hall is set alight. Violent and now deadly.
The other fear here is... We've heard some gunshots, possibly.
A drive-by in Detroit killed a teenager in the crowd. Curfews are now imposed in multiple states.
Hey, get inside! Get inside! Here's an arrest.
4:45.
Here comes another one.
From Seattle to Chicago and in the heart of Los Angeles, police begin taking control. A new lockdown from a new spreading threat. The virus hit New York. A lone nurse puts herself in the firing line.
We don't need no more black brothers and sisters dying. That's it!
Pleading, begging for this to end.
And Ashley Mullaney is okay and live for us in Minneapolis tonight. Ashley, there at least there was a very different response from police today. Yes. Has it worked?
Okay. 4:35.
Yeah, Mark, well, after days of being outnumbered and overrun, it did finally feel like police were on the front foot and on the offensive for the first time since this all kicked off. Tonight, there are rapid response teams across the city responding to any flare-ups, but other people are taking matters into their own hands, like this business here tonight, where the owners are armed and ready to take on looters. Police, of course, are supported by the National Guard. Last night, we had 700 troops on the ground here in Minneapolis tonight. That number is almost 11,000. Mark?
Just incredible scenes. Ashley, thank you. We have Paul Caddick live in Los Angeles now. Paul, a state of emergency has been declared there. Is there any sense that this is being brought under control where you are?
Good evening, Mark. Well, it is a little bit quieter now. We have firefighters working behind us here, and every now and then you see police patrols zooming around trying to deal with trouble spots and looting that is still going on in this part of the city. There is a curfew now in place after protests here in West Los Angeles became a standoff between demonstrators and police that descended into violence and vandalism. It has been 30 years since the Rodney King riots here in LA, but racial tensions have been simmering in this country for so much longer.
In city after city, calls for justice.
I'm frustrated and I'm angry and I feel powerless.
Yes, we are upset. Yes, we are hurting.
The country's long history of racial injustice boiling over.
This is 400 years. 400 years we have been dealing with systemic racism. It has to be a systemic change.
This is not in the spirit of Martin Luther King Jr. This is chaos.
My administration will stop mob violence, and we'll stop it cold.
Some of the anger directed at the president, stoking tension on Twitter as the mob reached the gates of the White House. Warning protesters have been greeted with the most vicious dogs and most ominous weapons. In Minneapolis, the current epicenter of America's pain and anger, the calls are only growing louder for 3 more officers involved in that deadly arrest to be charged.
I can't breathe!
Derek Chauvin filmed kneeling on George Floyd's neck, ignoring his pleas for air, already charged with murder, now on suicide watch.
The situation in Minneapolis is no longer in any way about the murder of George Floyd. It is about attacking civil society, instilling fear, and disrupting our great cities.
There is no honor in burning down your city. We as a city are so much more than this.
A curfew is now in place here in Los Angeles, as it is in many cities tonight, but it's having no effect here. That store being looted right now. The nearest police are actually only just down at those traffic lights, but they're dealing with other people. A long night with resources spread thin. And here now the consequences of authorities being stretched to the limit. Here on Los Angeles' famous Melrose Avenue, this building up in flames. Firefighters doing the best they can. They need a police escort to respond to most fires. And just down the road, other fire crews are busy with another blaze.
Last time they burned Los Angeles down, this time they come out where the white people at and they burn their stuff down.
In America, justice is never achieved at the hands of an angry mob.
The president and leaders in cities across the country say the protests have been hijacked by radical extremists bent on anarchy.
Groups of outside radicals and agitators are exploiting the situation to pursue their own separate and violent agenda.
But the anger is real, and despite the president's pleas,
Healing, not hatred, justice, not chaos.
The thin blue line is tonight holding on by a thread.
Destructive protests are swooping across America from coast to coast as we go to air this morning. These pictures are just in from Philadelphia, where looters are ransacking police cars. Businesses have also been trashed as riots rage out of control, and a curfew is in effect, and all retailers have been ordered to close as police struggle to maintain order. Let's go to US correspondent Amelia Brace, who's in Washington, D.C. The White House went into lockdown over the weekend, Amelia, and the tensions are escalating further this morning.
Yeah, that's right, Eddie.
These curfews now in place right across America. Of course, the match was lit here in Minneapolis, but this fire has spread right around the country. And we are seeing live pictures.
They've just cleared it. They've all left the property now. So we still have a group of people who were arrested sitting on a sidewalk over there.
Yes.
To our north, we have a helicopter continuing to focus on an area where they believe there are other demonstrators or rioters. So we're going to try to follow them and see what else is happening to the north of us. But it looks like this situation here de-escalated, and it ended quietly.
Joe, can you hear us by chance?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. A little bit earlier, you
Yes.
were talking about the distinction between the different motivations of groups within the protest. You know, you said largely it was very peaceful,
Right.
and you know, those who were there to fight for injustice and honor, you know, those who have been killed at the hands of police. Like they left at about 8 o'clock when that curfew went into effect. And then you spoke about some of these other groups. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit more?
Well, sure. You had some people leave after the 7:30 protest. I mean, and this is a protest that ended with a pastor giving a prayer, and everyone kneeling, bowing heads, and ending with a prayer. And then many people left, right? But then you had the crowd still sticking around, and then they had decided they were going to start moving. And once 8 o'clock hit, the stakes are raised because the curfew's in order, right? So they gradually moved to the north and the east, several blocks, 10, 20 blocks. And police sort of trying to keep up with them every step of the way, blocking them off at certain points. And as they moved, we saw others drive up and jump out of their cars and jump into the crowd. None of them had signs with them. These are people who clearly just want to join in the mob. Whether they want to cause destruction, we can't tell. But the point is, you had someone with an Antifa flag. You had someone else with a sign that said, you know, suggesting this was a peaceful protest. You had some yelling that this should remain peaceful while they were marching. They didn't want the destruction that we saw. They didn't want the broken windows. So you have different factions within this group. Back to you.
All right. Joe Dana live for us. Let's go to Team 12's Bianca Bono as we continue our coverage of people still out protesting, now going almost 2 hours past the curfew that was installed by Governor Doug Ducey. Bianca?
Yep, that's exactly right, Mark. And right now we are at Fillmore and 9th Street, where again, Phoenix Police has asked us to kind of hang tight because, in their words, the situation is not under control. And they said it would not be safe for us to head south, which is where we see several police vehicles down towards Taylor. I can tell you that over the past 10, 15 minutes or so, we saw at least half a dozen people right in front of us get arrested. And what we're hearing is that there's some sort of prisoner transport vehicle that they might be waiting for, either a bus or a van or something like that, that will likely take all of these people away from the scene. We've been seeing several either protesters or people who were just out past curfew get put in handcuffs, and many of them were taken south on 9th Street, again, I would imagine towards those vehicles that are lit up down at the end of the street. We also heard there's likely another large group of people detained towards Taylor. But again, we have been told that it's not yet safe or clear for media to walk south on this street because they're trying to kind of block off the neighborhood. Again, we've been told by police who are standing right here next to us that there isn't necessarily a large group of protesters anymore, that everyone is scattered and is kind of hiding out in this neighborhood. Very similar to what Joe is seeing. He's just a few blocks east of me. So it looks like they're still kind of combing through these neighborhoods. We also did see one gentleman who lives right down the street from here. He said he hasn't been able to get back. He had to show his ID to prove that he does, in fact, live right down the street, and that's the reason that he is out, because he can't get to where he lives. I'll also tell you that as members of the media, we were ID'd to ensure, you know, that we have a valid reason to be out past curfew, which in case those at home do not know, members of the media are an exception to this curfew. We're allowed to be out here if we are reporting, and that's exactly what we're doing right now. So we're going to try to potentially go around here so we can head south, because we're seeing a lot of police vehicles again in the area of 9th Street and Taylor, even maybe beyond towards Van Buren. So we'll send it back to you guys for now, and we're going to head down that way to check out what's happening there.
All right, Team 12's Bianca Bono with us on another night of protests in the Valley. Things seem to be possibly slowing down for now. A much tougher much more visible police presence in Phoenix. In Scottsdale, where Mitch Carr is reporting, we have seen very little activity, if at all, if any. But earlier this evening, about 9 o'clock, you're looking at some videotape at the corner of 7th Street and Roosevelt, where police were quick to move in and begin arresting people who defied the orders to disperse after this was called an unlawful assembly. That was declared at about 8:14, 14 minutes after the curfew went into effect. These people, about 45 minutes later, were arrested by Phoenix police, and we've seen scenes like this across downtown Phoenix, where Phoenix police, after the fourth night of this, are not taking any guff from these protesters who want to engage.
Yeah, that's right. And, you know, this is in response to damage and vandalism that has been done not only in downtown Phoenix the past couple of nights with the Sandra Day O'Connor courthouse being damaged, the windows being busted out there on the first floor, damage to a Chase Bank. Multiple locations around downtown Phoenix over the past couple of nights. And then, of course, what we've been showing you that happened in Scottsdale at Fashion Square Mall. So this is in response. The curfew is in response to that, not to dissuade people from protesting. That certainly is allowed, but you know, they don't want to see the type of damage and vandalism that has happened over the past couple of nights as the nighttime hours wear on. So this is going to continue throughout the week. This curfew is expected to last each night. It goes into effect every night at 8 p.m. and expires at 5 o'clock in the morning. So outside of that time frame, protesters are certainly encouraged to come and raise their voices and support their cause. Again, you're looking at some earlier video that we showed you of some of these groups that have kind of broken off from the main peaceful protest that started earlier this evening before the curfew went into effect. As some of our reporters have said, largely those protesters have gone home. They have left home for the night ahead of this curfew. And then, of course, you had some groups that later kind of added on and then seemed to be, you know, obviously they're provoking police by throwing water bottles and you know, getting into these altercations with police officers and ultimately getting arrested.
And part of this, again, is let's see what we can get away with. Let's see how far we can push police. There was an 8 o'clock curfew. Let's see if at 9 o'clock we can go out and still engage police and not get arrested. The last few nights we've been able to do it.
Sure, we were well into what, 2 o'clock in the morning last night?
And we weren't taken down like this. We weren't arrested. And I think that what you're seeing here is twofold. I think you're seeing a message by police that enough is enough. There's a curfew now in place. You're going to observe this curfew. You can protest right up until 8 o'clock, but after that, you're going to get arrested if we catch you out. And then the second thing is to send a message that, look, we've played nice. We allowed you to go out and protest, but you broke the rules.
Right.
And you're not going to get away with it anymore. And so possibly, as the next few nights play out, you will see less and less of this.
Right. And like you said, Mark, earlier, about what's been happening in other major cities across the country. And it's clear that, you know, Arizona, Phoenix, city of Scottsdale do not want to see anything like some of the violence that we've seen in other parts of the country. It's just been horrific. I mean, you know, every time you open up your social media feed and you see, you know, something else happening in another city, it's saddening. And
it's disheartening.
It's very disheartening.
And again, I will say, because I think that people will misinterpret our analysis of this, but yes, there is a problem in this country.
For sure.
There is a endemic, systemic problem of social injustice when it comes to people of color. But there are right ways to bring about that change, and we saw the right way in the 1960s with Dr. King, and there are wrong ways to do it. And when you loot and destroy private property, when you threaten to attack women randomly, whether that's real or not real, you don't, not only do you not accomplish what your goal is, but you actually hurt the cause.
You hurt the cause, yes, you hurt the cause, you hurt the message. And we have seen some really beautiful, peaceful protests across the country. I saw a video today coming out of Denver, Colorado, of people lying down you know, on their
Very
back.
effective.
It was powerful. It was moving. And I think, you know,
lawful.
And lawful. And I think if you'll hear most of the activists that have been talking, that's what they want to see.
Right.
Those images are just as powerful, and they convey the message. And very few people condoning, you know, some of this, you know, violence, especially the violence, you know, that pertains to people. You know, when people are hurting other people in the process.
We can't live in a lawless society, but I don't think that there is anyone, and we're unfortunately, well, a lot of people would say fortunately, but we're not in a position to make change. What we are in a position is to be the voice for the voiceless at times, to raise the alarm, to raise the red flag, and to help these people get their message across.
Yeah, and hopefully, you know, this will be the start of real change in the future.
Yes.
It is sad that we're seeing some of the things that we're seeing, but it's time.
has come.
Right, and hopefully this will just be the catalyst to really start to change the system overall.
Right.
At the local level, at the federal level, and just, you know,
Absolutely.
this can't all be for nothing.
And the time is now. I think that we've seen too much of this, and I think that now, and it's interesting that it's coming on the heels of the coronavirus pandemic, not only here in the U.S. but across the world. But we do need to change the conversation. We need to have a serious, ongoing, fruitful conversation about the problem of racism and social injustice in this country. And I think now might be the perfect time for that to happen, to have that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you know, we'll be continuing to monitor the developments here in Phoenix. We don't know just quite yet if there are protests planned for the rest of this week. But again, that curfew will allow that to happen at least up until about 8 o'clock every single night. And hopefully, you know, we don't see too much more scenes like this, like what we're seeing right now of people having to be arrested. This is video from a little bit earlier ago that you're seeing there.
About an hour ago.
About an hour.
7th Street and Roosevelt, right in the heart of downtown Phoenix. I will say that as this fourth night of protests went underway over George Floyd, earlier there were hundreds marching peacefully in the downtown area. The official protest ended about 7:30. There were still about 100 people in the streets at about 8 o'clock. And then at that point, they were officially in violation of the curfew. At that point, around 8 o'clock, we understand that an ATM was smashed on Central Avenue. At 8:19, police said to the group that was roving around Central Avenue in downtown Phoenix, look, you are an unlawful assembly, and you're in violation of the curfew. And then what you see here started to unfold. Police started moving in and making arrests. Several malls in the valley were closed today, some for repairs, some out of just a sense of let's not have what happened at Scottsdale Fashion Square happen at our mall. We'll close out of a sense of precaution today. Scottsdale Fashion Square was closed, Chandler Mall was closed.
Right now on 12 News at 10, another night of unrest across the valley and the country. For the fourth night in a row, protesters have hit the streets demanding justice for the death of George Floyd, who was killed by a Minnesota police officer. But the calls for justice have quickly been overshadowed by the protesters that have turned violent and turned to looting and riots. But tonight, Valley police agencies have taken a stronger stance.
I want to give you a live look right now from Sky 12, and you can see some police presence down there. But for the most part, things seem to be quieting down right now. We will certainly keep our eyes on what is going on.
But around the country, things have been even more volatile and violent. So to prevent that...
Let's see some of the people. Las Vegas.
Alright, there's nothing going on. With TV, especially on our space clarity. So also nothing is happening here. Large and
now over here, and they're running towards Bobby and Steve's car wash. People are familiar with it.
Very familiar.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting, Jonathan, what was it, maybe 20, 30 minutes ago, we heard from officials in Long Beach. We heard from the mayor, Mayor Garcia, the police chief Luna, the fire chief as well, assuring people in Long Beach that things were going to be taken care of there, that they were on this, and that people would be arrested. We heard Chief Luna say that he thought there may have been looting in 7 or 8 locations. We looked at one of them over 6th and Long Beach Boulevard, but he said they were basically bouncing from call to call, but concentrating mostly in the downtown area. They were prepared, and they expected this protest to be peaceful. District and Melrose area last night. They thought this would be peaceful, and since then they've had to call in not only the National Guard but sheriff's deputies as well.
And I thought it was interesting, Colleen, when we spoke with the chief before that news conference, we spoke with Chief Robert Luna of the Long Beach Police Department. We had asked him about the National Guard. He said that was simply an option, and not even an hour later when he's speaking at that news conference, not only had they been called in, they were on their way, as well as other agencies, as we're definitely getting a closer vantage point, or first good vantage point of this fire. Eliana, where is this happening, if you can hear us, and what do you see from your vantage point?
Jonathan, this is on 6th and Pine. The exact address is going to be 655. It is a men's wear, not necessarily the Men's Warehouse brand, but it is a men's clothing store. So we understand that this is possibly one of the businesses that was raided earlier today, or looted rather, by some of the looters here in the area. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that the business owners had even boarded up some of the windows, but it didn't matter. People still got in. Again, this is going to be 6th and Pine in Long Beach, the Long Beach Fire Department on scene. It's unclear how this fire began, but as you noticed as we were approaching the scene, this is putting up a lot of smoke. We could see the smoke all the way from the Vernon area, which is miles away. And right next to the building that is on fire, we do have a building that appears to be under construction. Wow. So it's very possible that the flames could spread to that building, because you still have a lot of exposed wood from that building that is still in the works here. But again, this is some sort of men's clothing store here in Long Beach, really at the heart of the activity that we saw today. I know for sure we were over here today covering some of the peaceful protests on these very streets, and now unfortunately this major structure here on fire.
Yeah, this is just a devastating scene. I mean, we are seeing a lot of white smoke, but those flames continuing there in the back part of the building. And there also appears to be, aside from the building that's under construction, another structure. It might be connected over on the right side of our screen, Eliana? Right,
yeah, there's
directly
actually
adjacent to it?
Yeah, right next to it, I do see that end there. I don't know if it's all one part of the same building. Okay. It looks like it is, actually. So it looks like it's all connected, but I was widening out the shot because when you mentioned that portion of the building, I actually noticed that there's another building just on the backside of it, also under construction with all of the wood still exposed, now in danger of catching fire.
What is the wind situation? If memory serves me correctly, this is an area of retail and restaurants. Pine Street, a lot of people go down there and just walk around and enjoy the beach community. What's the wind situation? Is it possible some of these embers could blow over there?
Yeah, they really could. They could blow in the direction of some of these buildings, especially the buildings that are just to the south, which is one of the buildings that's under construction. And just south of that, we have a mix of commercial buildings. We've got some apartments there coming up. And there's actually a sign on this stretch of the road that says Pine Avenue. I'll try to show you that because that's kind of iconic here for this portion of Long Beach. You see there, Pine Avenue, and that's exactly where this is burning. Pine Avenue and 7th Street. And I'm going to widen out the shot just a little more. I want to just show you where this is in relation to the ocean. There it is. That's where you find the Aquarium of the Pacific, the Queen Mary. These were all areas that I mentioned earlier today because we were out here covering these protests. And now, unfortunately, the first major fire to break out here in the Long Beach area, breaking out here at this men's clothing store on the corner of 6th and Pine.
Elliot? Yeah, I'm sorry, there are lofts and apartments and a lot of residential areas in there.
It's all tightly compact too, Colleen, because there's really not so much in the way of small homes in this area. It's mostly big commercial buildings, big apartment structures like that one you see there. And look at the additional units that are now coming up on scene. I'm monitoring on the scanner to see if they're going to go defensive on this one. And what that means is they're not going to let anyone on the roof or in the building. And at this point, I haven't seen either or. So I'm not seeing anyone on the roof because the fire is actually shooting through the roof. So if the firefighters got on the roof, they run the risk of having the roof collapse. And if people are in the building, the roof could collapse right on them. So for that reason is why we're starting to see some of these master streams come into place here. So they're going to surround and drown this building. The water can go from the outside in, but we're not going to see any firefighters in the building.
Yeah, it appears that they, except for the firefighters right underneath the building, that they are definitely in a defensive mode. They don't want to risk their lives here trying to put out this fire. Like you said, there's no way they're getting on top of that. Eliana, I know that your shot was mostly focused on this fire as you approached it from miles away. Do you see any kind of other police activity in this area, any other kind of looting or anything that strikes you as odd during this time?
Yeah, let me look around a little bit because as you mentioned, we were completely focused on that fire as we were approaching the scene. But we are seeing more additional units throughout the city here. So on all of the neighboring streets, we are seeing police officers with their lights and sirens. We understand also that there's still some looting going on in the area. So that we remember covering the looting that was taking place there at the Pike outlets earlier today. And then Gil Davis and Newschopper4 Bravo was here not that long ago covering additional looting in the area. So that's still going on. In terms of peaceful protests, though, we haven't seen any of that in a little bit, not since earlier today. Right now, their main concern is going to be to stop this fire and to keep it from spreading to any of the adjacent structures.
And this is exactly what they were concerned about in Long Beach. We heard from the fire chief there. That's why they is there as well. And we heard as well from the chief tonight. He said, and I'm quoting here, "I hope you're disturbed by what you see. We are disturbed by what you're seeing, by what we're seeing as well." You know, the effort was to get the peaceful protesters off the street and then deal with the other folks, the other element there, the people who were looting, the people who may or may not have been starting these fires. Again, we don't know if this is arson, but if it goes the way it did last night in Melrose and Fairfax, there's a better than 50% chance that this fire was deliberately set.
And Colleen, you mentioned the mayor's comments, and you're right. We don't know the cause of this fire at this point, but it does coincide also with the timing of the fires that were being set last night, as you mentioned earlier. And you know what? The mayor also struck a really, it was a striking chord when he said, "You are not welcome in our community," when he was talking to the looters and the people causing destruction. "You are not welcome in the city of Long Beach." And I think he was being very, firm and saying, as we move forward in the days to come, they are going to take a very different approach to how they handle a lot of the violent acts that take away from the peaceful protesting that they want to happen, they want to see happen. They made it very clear that that's something they're in support of, especially the cause that the protests are all about, but that this will not be tolerated.
You know, it's interesting as well. They said, according to the chief early on, this was a scheduled protest. It was scheduled for just outside the police station. All of a sudden, they looked up. There were thousands of people outside, and that's when they asked for mutual aid. They asked for the National Guard to come in and protect property there. They also asked for the Sheriff's Department. As we heard from the Sheriff's Department, Long Beach is definitely one of the spots that they're concentrating on tonight. The other, Santa Monica, which is where we've been as well, and Whittier, although, as we heard from Jim Heldman, who's with the Sheriff's Department, that the police there were able to get that under control and sort of arrest the looters on their own. I'm not sure if they're still out there or not, but we'll try to find out.
And another thing that we were wondering about earlier was the issuance of its own curfew, right? The city of Long Beach issuing its own curfew of 8 p.m., which came 2 hours later after the countywide curfew, which already covers the city of Long Beach, but they called it an emergency curfew, you know, and it's unclear if maybe it helps them in a certain way. In terms of staffing and asking for emergency resources. We want to bring in our own Conan Nolan, who's been here with us today following this coverage and giving us perspective and talking to sources. And Conan, we're watching this fire burn in Long Beach, just yet another hot spot after what we saw all day in Santa Monica.
That's right. I have to add to what you and Colleen were saying about the news conference. My jaw dropped when I heard the police chief say that this surprised him, that he knew there would be some agitators, but he had no idea there would be this kind of violence. And that's a remarkable statement, considering the police chief knew what happened in Minneapolis. He knew what happened on Melrose last night, and for him to say that in the news conference was quite remarkable. And that yes, they were surprised by the fact that there were people there who were bent on destruction when we had seen it in other parts of the county. And
not only other parts of the county, Conan, think about Oakland and think about Portland, think about a number of cities in the South. We're talking Dallas. Tonight we saw D.C., Atlanta. It's happening all over the country. So yeah, it did sort of take me aback a little bit when he said that. It was almost as if, well, it won't happen here, and then all of a sudden they had thousands of people right in front of the police station there.
Right, and when he said 80% were peaceful, that means 20% were not. That's a huge percentage. That means for 1,000 protesters, 200 are out to loot and burn the city. So yeah, I think.
And they also talked about how they quadrupled their staff today. The number of officers, they had quadrupled today, and it's just astonishing that we're still seeing this happen.
Right, although it would be interesting to find out, and I'm sure we will, when the call for mutual aid came. But if the chief actually was surprised, that if this is a surprise to him, then I can guarantee you that news conference is going to be used in civil litigation by people and store owners and individuals who have been harmed by what's happened in that city. It's a very difficult job that he has, and 2020 is hindsight. I certainly understand that. But the fact that he said that he was not anticipating this was somewhat dramatic, and to the point that I hate to bring this up because it's not a nice point to make, but for those who believe that what we're seeing here in this city, throughout Southern California, in many cities in Southern California, throughout the country, if it's deflecting the peaceful message for social justice and the effort against any kind of police brutality, if they believe it's deflected it, it hasn't. It has overwhelmed it, because we're looking at destruction, the likes of which we are not going to recover from for some time to come, based on the fact we have a Depression-era unemployment. Currently, there is no money to rebuild right now, none. And whereas those of us who remember Rodney King and the years it took to rebuild parts of Los Angeles, we have the potential for these burned out shells staying in this condition for quite some time, because there's just no capital to invest in communities when you have 40 million unemployed. So the COVID-19 crisis, the pandemic, it could not, there's never a good time for something like this, but this is unique. We didn't have this in the Watts riots or the Rodney King riots, where you had a Depression-era economy that is going to have to look at this and say, where do we get the funding to rebuild? It's just not going to be there.
Conan, you've talked to the mayor, you've talked to other people today. How concerning is it that this is not over tonight, that there are other scheduled protests this week, and no doubt, given the intel that we've heard from law enforcement, this will happen again?
Well, Colleen, to that point, those of us, and you remember Rodney King in 1992, the iconic image of that civil unrest were small business owners in parts of the city who went to the rooftops of their establishments and protected them with weapons fire, with guns. And I can only pray that doesn't happen here, but I can guarantee you that there are business owners who are watching this in other parts of the city who are saying, if the police aren't going to protect my livelihood, my investment, my family, and my family business, I will. And for those who lined up at the beginning of this global pandemic, when we had the stay-at-home orders lined up at gun shops because they thought there might be this chaos that would develop, they certainly didn't anticipate what happened in Minneapolis. But they're now sitting back and saying, "I'm glad I'm armed," because they are not seeing the kind of police response that they expect. Remember, the #1 priority of safety, and when you have citizens trying to stand up against looting and no police, that sends a message to everybody.
I suspect you're right about that. Very quickly, we have to switch back to Santa Monica as we continue to look at this fire in Long Beach at 6th and Pine. Conan, a question about the curfew. It's in effect again until 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, LA County, correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
All right. Thank you for that.
I should point out that other cities, in San Francisco, I just learned the curfew has been extended. It's indefinite, and this curfew may extend farther than that. You never. This is obviously a fluid situation. So the worry is that the worst is yet to come.
At this point, nothing would surprise us, right, guys? I mean. All right, we want to get to Kim Tobin right now on the ground in Santa Monica. You were covering a fire, Kim, just moments ago, and now what are you seeing?
Hey, Jonathan, we just moved maybe a block down here. We're at Santa Monica and 3rd, right near the promenade. We're at a Gap Kids, and you can see just some of this destruction that was done here a little bit earlier. It's really quiet now in this area, but we're just going to look. We hear the fire alarm going off, and we see inside of this Gap Kids that the sprinklers have turned on as well. So in addition to all the damage that was done here by the looters that came in and busted open these windows, stole all these clothes, inside it could have possibly been a small fire that was started or something that triggered that sprinkler system, and we can see maybe an inch of water that's pretty much filling up this entire store right now. But again, just so much broken glass. We know that a lot of these people that were targeting these stores had gone up to them with hammers and they were able to get through, but this is some super thick glass that we're talking about here. But they pretty much pulled all the mannequins. It doesn't look like the looters were able to really get too close into the promenade area and affect a lot of the businesses and the shops inside of it. This is kind of the surrounding area. Light, it looks like the fire alarm that's going on
has already been gutted. This is the men's suit outlet. It's right. right next to a very large
White House, hundreds of demonstrators gathering nearby. In Minneapolis, the epicenter of the unrest. A tanker truck drives through a crowd of protesters, some who were reportedly kneeling. Video shows demonstrators stopping the truck and removing the driver, who was later arrested. No one seriously injured. Protesters across the country chanting the last words of George Floyd, whose death in Minneapolis police custody last week has sparked national outrage.
No justice, no peace.
The demonstrations largely peaceful at the outset.
We deserve justice, not just for what happened to Mr. Floyd in Minneapolis, but what's happening to black men and women all across this country, and that's been happening.
But quickly turning violent. Fires and looting in Philadelphia and Los Angeles. Mayors in at least 25 cities instituting curfews and pleading for calm.
I will not let criminals take over our city and shame the majority of us.
This sheriff in Michigan attempting to show solidarity with demonstrators.
We want to be with y'all for real. So I took my helmet off and laid the batons down. Yeah. I want to make this a parade, not a protest.
But elsewhere, police and protesters clashing violently. In New York City, an NYPD vehicle drives into a crowd of people Saturday. Officials say the officer accelerated after someone threw a flaming object on top of the SUV. In Atlanta, 2 officers use a taser to get a pair of college students out of a car Saturday. Local TV station WGCL capturing the moment live on air.
They flattened the tire, broke the glass to the car, and I hear what I believe to be a taser.
The students were reportedly in violation of a citywide curfew. Atlanta's mayor says the 2 officers have been fired. Back in Minnesota,
I would like to see the arrest of the 3 officers that were part of the moment in which George Floyd died.
But with centuries of systemic racial injustice at the root of the outrage, the arrest of the officers involved is only a small part of what people are fighting for.
I want to be able to go in a white neighborhood and feel safe. I want to be able, when a cop is driving behind me, I don't have to clench and be tense, okay? I want to be able just to be free and not have to think about every step I take.
Tonight, we're learning the White House was put on lockdown Friday as protesters gathered nearby. The president and first lady were reportedly taken to an underground bunker for a short time. No word if that has happened tonight as protesters gather again. We've learned those fires have been extinguished and the crowds have been pushed away from the White House. I'll send it back to you in the studio.
All right, John, thanks for that. Let's go back up to Sky 5. Still, this is over the fire at 7th and Pine in Long Beach. Let's go up to Sky 5. Are you there?
That's right. It looks like they've done good work on getting the fire out on this men's suits warehouse, as you said, in 7th and Pine in Long Beach. It looks like most of the flames have been knocked down. We still have some smoke coming out of the roof of the store. Now, as we came on scene, we'll remind you that we saw a little bit of smoke coming out the door, and then the next thing you know, the whole building was on fire. So they've got the area completely shut down. Just a block away at 6th and Pine, we heard just moments ago that the officers were taking rocks and bottles from a crowd out there, and a number of officers moved to that location and chased a number of different people off. So even in just a very short, close distance to something that's rather major going on, we still are having some unrest in the area, and people are confronting the officers. So it's still a dangerous and dynamic situation out here in Long Beach. We, of course, are going to stay overhead and bring you all the details when they become available overhead. This is Derek Bell in Sky 5. Now back to you in the studio.
All right, Derek, we appreciate it. We'll talk to you in a few minutes. The sports world now has been reacting to George Floyd's death all week long.
Yeah, prominent athletes have stepped forward, hoping to use their social
possibly causing some problems, but right here in this area, it's very calm. And we want to tell you about the National Guard members who have been brought in here. Now, we want to show you earlier this evening, we saw a number of protesters approach some of those guardsmen, yelling at times and chanting, but remaining peaceful. And there was quite a large protest here at the steps of the state capitol, probably at least 300 people here. Now, Governor Gavin Newsom deployed about 1,000 Guard members after declaring a state of emergency. That was after all the violence, looting, and destruction on Saturday here in the LA area. More than 500 of those Guard members are here in the LA County area to help support the LAPD and the Sheriff's Department as they try to stop the violence and destruction and, again, all of that looting. And earlier we asked some of the people who were here joining that protest about how they felt about the presence of the Guard.
I don't think that's right. I feel like that's a threat to us. We protesting peacefully, so we don't need them. We're not doing nothing.
They're just trying to keep order, but we're trying to change the system, you know? So they're trying to do their duty, we're trying to do ours.
Back out here live, we're looking down the streets here near City Hall. We're looking towards the LAPD headquarters. Yesterday, there were a number of people gathered near LAPD headquarters at times, and then later in the evening, of course, people were running around the streets of downtown LA. You can see, at least right here in this area, a big difference tonight. We've got guardsmen on the corners over there, guardsmen here right next to City Hall. They seem to be making a difference. And once again, there is a curfew in effect, and earlier this evening also a number of people were arrested here for violating the curfew, so they definitely want people to take that seriously tonight. Reporting live in downtown Los Angeles, Amy Powell, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Yeah, Amy, are they, so they're at City Hall, and are they also outside of police headquarters, the guardsmen?
Yes, there were several guards out there earlier. Now, as I look over there right now, I don't see as many of the guardsmen as I did earlier. I think perhaps some of them have deployed to another area of the city to offer support. I'm not sure, because there were several of them out there earlier. Right now, I'm not seeing as many of those guardsmen, so I think they are being sent to other areas, perhaps where, in the area where I'm hearing those sirens coming from, one of the areas that was a trouble spot last night, they may be over there right now, helping the police try to maintain order.
Okay, we will let you regroup and see if you can find out where these other folks have gone. We know what other cities they've gone to. All right, thanks, Amy Powell, reporting live in downtown. Now, a lot of protesters hitting the streets in Huntington Beach earlier today, and former mixed martial arts and UFC fighting chap Chuck Liddell was in the middle of it all, but this famous fighter was there to help keep the peace. Veronica Miracle has been keeping an eye on that, of course. Now, that's something new. This is, I was unaware of Chuck Liddell being involved in anything, but we're going to have to find out more about that, and we're going to try to turn that video around and get it to you. In the meantime, we are back over this situation in Long Beach.
Yeah, we're back over the situation in Long Beach at the Men's Suit Supply. This is on 7th and Pine. We're watching that firefight take place. Let's go back over to Veronica Miracle, live with more. Veronica?
Yeah, Colleen, we have been watching so many different incidents pop up, and we want to show you one from Huntington Beach. Now, you might recognize this person we're about to show you, Chuck Liddell. He is a former UFC fighter. He actually appeared on season 9 of Dancing with the Stars. He has a list of movies that he's been in. And what he did, he tells us, and this person here, is that he was breaking up fights. He was going into Huntington Beach, and you see here the escalation, the tension, the anger, and then also the de-escalation. He tells us that his intention was to go down and to talk to people who were defending their businesses, protesting peacefully, and just trying to keep the peace. He's in Huntington Beach currently because his house is being remodeled, he says. He's from Santa Barbara, so this is his community, and he just really wanted to talk to people who are feeling angry and also try and just keep the tempers from flaring. Take a listen to what he had to say.
It's good to see people defending their city, and it's just terrible. I mean, violence begets violence. Violence doesn't help anybody. We all know what happened was wrong. Everybody I know thinks it was wrong. It's hard to watch. But this does not help it. Destroying cities, destroying people, hurting people does not do any good for anybody. So, you know, hey, protest all you want, just, you know, do it peacefully.
hopefully we can see more people like Chuck Liddell going out and just trying to keep the peace and keep people from acting out. Back to you guys.
All right, Veronica. Yes, absolutely. Everyone's trying to get their message out, and hopefully, for the most part, it has been a peaceful protest, and people have been getting their message out. But of course, on these evenings, we've been seeing tensions escalate. We're live over
let me show
fire.
you.
They've been battling this fire for quite
everywhere.
some time, Mark.
I'm trying to see some real footage, but I don't see. I'm not able to get it. It's from the downtown San Diego. Now let's see what protesters returns to looting in a second night in a row. This is Union Bank. Police is still there doing this stuff. And let me go back to okay. Let's go downtown listening area and we see thousands of protesters here. Do we have anything here? Let's see.
Having to deal with and law enforcement. Again, we've seen such a presence of law enforcement here, Jonathan and Colleen. We've actually seen the sheriffs in their tactical gear just riding in the back of unmarked pickup trucks, just patrolling this area because even though they have blocked off all of the streets, there's still so many alleyways and pockets that people can still kind of come back in and loot if they wanted to.
And Darsha, as we're talking to you, we do want to apologize to our viewers about some of the profanity. It's the nature of what we're doing. We're covering this live. This is real, this is raw, but we do want to apologize for some of the profanity you might see. Darsha, you earlier, before you had made it out to Santa Monica, did speak with some protesters. Can you give us just some of the perspective from their end about why so much of where you are right now continues to
If you guys have noticed, have you seen the latest season series on the Netflix is about the designated survivor? I can feel the same thing is happening in this, right now in America's situation.
This is what ended up happening. I did speak to a protester who tried to stop some of the looting and stop some of the tagging. She did not want this to be the message of what was happening. They did not want it to deter from the message of George Floyd and how he died. But unfortunately, these are the images that we're showing right now because this is the result of what happened when those protesters, the protests dissolved into civil disobedience. But again, we did have so many protests across the Southland that remained peaceful, and it was just a few of the
It's about 5 hours ago. Let's see that. Okay.
That is not us. We are perfect the way we are.
What he was saying.
The planned protests, and once again, we are getting a closer look here as we're hearing that they are moving towards City Hall.
Yeah.
We'll listen in here. Thank you so much for that, Tony. And I do just want to mention a moment that
I'm just giving you all
everyone seems to be in good spirits. The crowd is moving calmly.
What I want to make sure is not lost.
Let's see what a CNN is
we're
used
seeing
to
these
say.
remarkable pictures with this law enforcement presence directly behind you is the why.
It's not alive.
Why
it's not alive.
People have been out on the streets protesting. Why this violence is taking place.
He's our.
Yeah, I'm the manager for the building. Told him.
Got it. So what, just when you came and saw this at first look, what did you think?
Well, I was here from early in the morning and it was all quiet and the Vaughn's parking was becoming a parking lot for them. So I asked Vaughn's to clear out all the parking. They did. That helped a lot. And all of a sudden we saw, oh my goodness, there were like ants from everywhere. They just broke everything, went inside, took everything, and we tried to stop them. We put out a fire inside one of the stores. Thank God. Everything is great. Thank God.
Nobody was hurt in all this. How bad was the damage inside? I see Petite Spa here. How bad was that? Was pretty.
That's his spa. I think they took some of the equipment, I think.
Got it. And some of the other businesses here.
They-
I see some are really gutted.
They went into the nail salon and took paper towels. They took nail polish. They took just the stupidest things. But
How about if you had to guess, kind of managing this, how much damage do you think you're looking at?
well, the smoke shop lost $500,000 of equipment, of merchandise. There were maybe 150 people in that store, and maybe 50 people outside.
Wow. So there was no way to stop that once they started looting inside.
No, we were out of the way and said, go for it, you know. What can you do? But thank God everything's great.
Have you ever been through, witnesses something like this personally here?
Just the 94 riots, the 95 riots, right?
92.
92? No, I think.
Well, that was
whatever.
Anyway,
Okay,
you've seen it
yeah,
before in the city.
we've seen it before. And also the earthquake, 94 earthquake. It was almost the same kind of situation. But
So this is just
thank
like
God everyone's fine.
epidemic and epidemic.
We always got to look at the best side of things. Everything is great.
No lives were damaged. Thank you
So
very
happy.
much.
Thank you so happy about it.
$500,000, as you heard him say, down at the smoke shop here, one of the areas. Again, just shattered glass everywhere, grabbing anything they can see inside the stores. I'm
$500,000 glass
going
and
to
it
walk
was-
down here. The smoke shop is down the
this way,
street a
it's
little
like
bit
it's
here. See if we can walk down.
So here in San Diego, it's still, just a curfew kind of a place. There's nothing else. Nothing else. Okay, let's see what we have it here. Okay, so we got
So
something.
now what we're trying to figure out is what's the next step. They're done for the
So
evening,
command
so
2,
they're
you
gonna
can
try
see
to
that in.
coordinate again. I mean, they'll try to go down one block and run into a row of police officers and squad cars, and they'll try to go
There
down
are quite a
another block.
people,
So right
but
now
not
there's kind
so
of
many.
corralled into Cesar Chavez area.
Most of the people in whole America, they don't do anything. They're just roaming around, and most of them are only taking videos. And I don't know what kind of people are doing protest exactly.
Police officers, but no protesters or looters or anything like that out there.
Yep. And you can follow sacb.com for any new developments. We're having
So there's
constant
b.com, they're
live
saying that.
updates to what's going on here in Sacramento, near the Capitol.
Okay,
California's capital.
okay. US is full of like Grand Theft Auto. If you have seen GTA, it's full of like that. People can do anything. They can grab a car, they can get a gun, they can ride a bike, they can ride a helicopter, they can smash police, they can do anything. It's just like
It has been elsewhere throughout the United
this
States.
Grand Theft Auto is same as like America's daily
George
routine.
Floyd's death in Minneapolis.
Every single person is like
The police officer
a hero.
kneeled on his neck for several minutes, sparking
Because you can
flames
see that
across
there's
the United States. Demonstrations
like in most
police brutality.
in most of the world, you won't be getting this much of freedom
wake
anywhere.
Not
You
even
know,
in the wake of amidst the coronavirus.
if something goes like this in any other part of the country,
Several times in the last
like
couple
any other
days, people
country,
say,
there won't be this much of chaos. They must have some
public
military
health
stabilized and everything will be
it's
shut
real,
down.
but so is
Kind of
police
like
brutality,
a curfew is to
inequality,
be
they
imposed on
say,
100%, but here you can see that based on a curfew also, emergency also, people are still outside
So this is the scene at
because
Cesar
they feel that
Chavez.
it's a serious issue, and it's a serious issue, but they might have
There's
some
just a
different kind
level
of
of uncertainty
way
about
to
what's going to
deal with
happen
it,
next.
I guess. But still, they're
I'm going
trying
to
to
pass
do
this back
something
on to my
which is not
colleague
legal
B
way.
and come back with any updates that we might have on this front of things.
and they're just roaming around. Okay, so they will be back when they have something. But I have a lot of things to.
Incredible, huh, Colleen? 120 miles an hour in a Ford Fusion. We have no information on the car that would lead us to believe that it is stolen. We just know that it was someone who was wanted for speeding. So if the car is not stolen, then the CHP likely already has the plates on the car. They've been able to run the plates, get it back to the register
Who
owner to
is
figure out if
taking the live
perhaps the
video of
car was
this?
stolen
And
at
how?
some point and just not reported, or if it is the rightful owner behind the wheel. I can guarantee you that they're already sending units over to that registered owner's address.
Have we passed the 57 yet, that crossing where you could hit the 57 and then go up to the 10 or the 210?
Yeah, so we just crossed the 57. The next freeway coming up is going to be the 605, but I don't know that we're going to get that far because it looks like he's about to exit. Sorrow, he's going to come right under us. So pardon us if our camera spins here as he comes right around us, but we will catch him on the other side here. He's going to go over the 60 freeway.
Oh my God.
The street right here. It's going to be Nogales.
So you can see that. You can see that it's
This is the Hacienda Heights
really
area.
just. I was
And you
talking
see that
about like
CHP unit is
GTA.
very
It's-
close. Is he going to try
Somebody
to
has.
do it? There it
Oh
is.
my God.
Right at the freeway on-ramp, and he
Oh
is
my
running.
God.
Okay, so we've got that person running. I don't know if that's the driver because he came
Oh,
on
fuck.
passenger side. I don't think he is. Here we go. Here's two additional
there's
people.
two people
I'm
out.
going to go
Three
into
people
infrared
now,
so we
yeah.
can keep a track on them. And there they go. They're running. Hopefully not onto the freeway. Please don't run into the freeway. I'm going to stay with this guy. He came out the driver's side. I don't know if it is the driver because two people came out the driver's side.
Yeah, it was too hard to see, Eliana, exactly who the driver was, and someone probably popped out of the back seat as we saw that third person.
Oh my God, this is really kind of a
Is this an
GTA.
on-ramp, an off-ramp? Where are we?
Are they giving entertainment to the public, or what they kind of a
This is going
protest?
to
It's a
be
kind
one
of a
of the
protest if you
off-ramps
see like
for the
people are
60 freeway, which is the Pomona
chasing the
freeway.
cars. The
And
police
you
are
see
chasing
cars
the
coming
cars.
right at them. They have no idea why these folks are running in their direction on the freeway.
There's
There's
somebody
actually
else there
two
as well,
guys
right?
right there.
Okay.
Yeah, so two guys right there on the off-ramp for the 60 freeway near Nogales.
I don't think I've ever seen them pit at that speed.
Wow, I haven't either, Colleen, because as you know, I know you have a lot of experience in this because you were in a vehicle that got pitted when you did that
Oh
special
my God.
segment with the LAPD. 35
I definitely say you might be
is the perfect speed.
liking
That
it.
to me looked like more than that, but hey, it worked.
Yeah, it definitely worked, and it worked. I mean,
That
I was
was
afraid when he flipped
incredible.
around, he might come back in the other direction.
Okay, and
And it looks like they're running.
Yeah,
And
is that just a big open field there?
Yeah, so this
Or
is,
is that
some
residential?
brush area next to the off-ramp, rather, for Nogales for the 60 freeway. And the mistake that these two guys are making is that they're sticking together. Usually, if they want to get away from the authorities, if they can split up and go different ways, it makes it a little bit more difficult for the authorities to keep track of where they're at. But so far, these two that came out of the same side of the vehicle on the driver's side, so for that reason, I don't know who was the driver, they're sticking together on this one.
And where are they? Are hiding in the shadows there?
Or is that one there
Yeah,
with the lights just pulling up?
Yeah, I believe that they're still hiding there in the brush. I haven't seen them come out. Again, this is going to be the 60 freeway Nogales exit, and our shot looks a little bit red there because I have the infrared in so that we can look at these guys. And this vehicle is coming up and stopping. I wonder why. I think it's because the CHP is right in front of him, and so he can't exit off the freeway. This guy has no idea what's going on. He's just trying to get home, getting off the Nogales Street exit from the 60 freeway, and now the CHP is.
You know what? We're going to keep an eye on the situation.
Look at these cars. They're coming at
He's
freeway speeds. Oh, no. I'm going to zoom out, guys. I don't feel comfortable. I don't know what's going to happen here with all these cars coming at him at these speeds. And he just moved off to the emergency lane again. I'll zoom in once again. But, boy, this is so dangerous. This guy should just stop. He really runs the risk of...
And we're going to go back to the story of the protests and what has been going on today. Looks like he's run out of speed here, run out of gas. Robert Kovacic, you're up in the newsroom. You have some news for us as well?
Well, Colleen, this is something that you're going to hear for the first time only on NBC4.
So
many people wonder what exactly is the National Guard's role here.
This was amazing. This was amazing. Have you seen that thing? Let's get back a little bit. Let's get back to this. And let's see this. Let's check this out. I'm just playing it again for you.
helicopter overhead, as well as those ground
This is a
units.
car just like a GTA. Someone is just dragging the car at a very high speed, and there are 3 to 4 people, and police is chasing it. And on the high speed chase, you can see that police will take it over.
Initially tried to pull him over was for speeding. But in terms of
And the
how many
helicopter
people
is
may be in
on the
car,
top,
that's still unclear
and
to
they're
us at
just
this time.
following
We
it.
haven't really had a chance to take
Just
a
see
good
how
look
they
inside of the
got
vehicle
smashed
to
into the
see
cab.
if perhaps we can even sneak a peek if the windows aren't
Just
darkly tinted.
just check that
But
out.
you can
Just
see
check
the
that out.
vehicle
It's a
now.
very
This
high
has really
speed.
been like the best shot we've been able to get because he's been going so fast.
So
And
fast,
now
man.
he's,
I love
I
this.
believe, on the 60 freeway coming
I
away
love
from
this.
Grant.
Which
Just
direction is
check
he
it out.
headed?
Just check it out.
He's going westbound. Westbound, if he continues in this direction, he's going to come right up to the 57, and then he'll eventually get to the 605. He's just on the other side of that overpass there, but we will continue to watch him here, really picking up the speed. I'll try to get my speedometer up
Oh
here
my God.
up in a second so that we can watch how fast he's
And
going
then
together.
it's just a boom.
In terms of traffic,
In
up
just a
ahead,
few
it
seconds,
seems
you
to be
can
just
see
this
a
light,
boom
correct?
from a police car.
Yeah, so traffic has
It's
been
gonna
pretty
bang it.
light, especially with the curfew in order for all of LA County. Streets have been very light. The freeway has
And
been
here the police is
generally
coming.
light
Here the
as
police is
well.
coming. Just check it out. Just check it out. This footage.
Going the wrong way on the freeway because that could have been extremely dangerous.
Just a minute. In just a
Unfortunately,
minute.
he didn't hit anyone or anything, and at this point, I don't see any visible damage that would lead us to believe that it is stolen. We just know that it was someone who was wanted for speeding. So if the car is not stolen, then the CHP likely already has the plates on the car. They've been able to run the plates, get it back to the register owner to figure out if perhaps the car was stolen at some point and just not reported, or if it is the rightful owner behind the wheel. I can guarantee you that they're already sending units over to that registered owner's address.
So now,
Have we passed the 57 yet, that crossing where you could hit the 57 and then go up to the 10 or the 210?
Yeah, so we just crossed the 57. The next freeway is coming up is going to be the 605, but I don't know that we're going to get
Now
that
here
far,
the
'cause it
police
looks like
will
he's
come.
about
Here
to
he will
exit, so
about
he's
to.
going to come
You
right
have to
under
see
us.
that.
So pardon us if our camera spins here.
Police
as
is
he
following
comes
it
right around
to
us,
the
but
end.
we will catch him
I
on
will
the
get
other side
smashed
here. He's
with the
going to
police
go
car.
right at the freeway on-ramp, and he is running. Okay, so we've got that
Now
person
people
running.
are
I don't
starting
know if
running.
that's the driver because he came out the passenger side. I don't think he is. Here we go. Here's two additional
there's
people.
two people
I'm
out.
going to go into
Three people
infrared
now,
so we
yeah.
can keep a track on them. And there they go. They're running. Hopefully
Okay,
not
so
on ice.
As much as they could, and they tried to save the life of this guy, this 25-year-old, and they called the LAFD.
This was
and the
really
LAFD
amazing
arrived,
thing.
and then
This
what
was
did they do?
amazing, really.
They form a line around that. The National Guard did everything they could there on scene, as well as members of our fire department, and that's what's going on. That you want to remember is that there are so many people that, yes, causing destruction, and there are so many people right now that are simply trying to help.
A lot of people still doing good things. We never want to lose sight of that. Robert, thank you for bringing that to us.
See you in a bit.
Yeah, we'll see you back soon here. And we want to get over to Kim Tobin on the ground there with another National Guard member behind you. Kim, where are you right now in Santa Monica?
Hey there, Jonathan. We're along 2nd Street right now between Broadway and Colorado, and you can see a lot of the National Guard members behind you, right near Santa Monica Place, the mall here. And this is just an area where they have these big fences up, but earlier this is one of the ones that was breached by some of those looters. And you can see another barrier fence and even a baby carriage there. So you can imagine maybe what was going through some of these people's minds. Maybe they had to get out and leave that behind, take their child. We're not sure. We just see the baby carriage right there, but it is completely empty in here. I did talk to one of the Santa Monica police officers who was blocking off the area on Broadway, and he had said that looters did get past some of this area, but they were caught very quickly. And the last time that we had seen you guys, we had a man who was getting arrested. Multiple people, hundreds of people, like Santa Monica officials have said, have been arrested tonight. And down this way, really, this is the National Guard kind of protecting this entire area. Again, we were over on the Bloomingdale side where they were. They're pretty much just guarding this entire area, the men and women of the National Guard with their rifles here, with their helmets on. And they're pretty much just staging around this area and kind of creating this line, protecting it, as we have seen members with the County Sheriff's Division, and even as far away as City of Guadalupe. We saw a lot of different places. Santa Barbara Sheriffs are here, so they are getting a lot of response, a lot of help that they're going to need because they're going through so many areas right now, because we still see a lot of these people that, you know, should be home right now, but breaking that curfew that's been in effect since 4 o'clock this afternoon. So we have seen a lot of arrests happening, but it is quiet right now in this area that we're in around Santa Monica Place, and the National Guard kind of just posted up here, reinforcing this line. They have their weapons here and just kind of staging here along this area near Santa Monica Place because they don't want anybody to get inside of the mall and cause even more destruction. They were able to do a little bit, but so far it looks pretty clear. We do see, actually, now that I'm talking, one of the stores there, Lorena Jane Active Living, has some shattered glass on that side. So it doesn't look like they were able to really bust in, but we see kind of big shattered glass, but not able to actually get inside the store. Jonathan and Colleen.
Kim, when we first came on the air today, this is really the first scene with Santa Monica Place, and where we started seeing a lot of the looting, and initially police got there very quickly. We